Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I am happy to let you know that my voice is pretty much back to normal and my coughing is to a minimum, so hopefully this is a little bit more enjoyable to listen to. Today's prompt is your jar full, and is it full of the right things? Okay, so the very first thing that I want you to do is draw a massive jar on your page. Mine, as you can see, takes up most of my page. Your jar can look however you want it to look. This is kind of my go-to jar style. All right, so take some time now just to draw a nice large jar on your page, and then we'll come back and get started. Alright, so don't worry too much about your jar being perfectly shaped or perfectly round or whatever it is. It's fine. Once you've got your jar all drawn out, we are going to start by adding rocks to our jar, okay? So the rocks are going to represent the things that are most important in our life, the things that we can't live without or wouldn't want to live without, the necessities, I would say, okay? So that could be things like your health, quality time with loved ones, having things like self-worth, whatever those things are to you that make up your life or make your life have meaning. I would put those in as rocks, okay? So do as many as you like, or as many as you can think of, and then we'll come back after that, okay? And for rocks, they can be round, they can be whatever kind of shape you want them to be. Throughout this prompt, we're going to do rocks, pebbles, and then sand. So take up as much space as you want, but just remember that we're adding other things in there as well, okay? So go ahead and start adding your rocks to your jar, and then we'll come back after that. Oh, and also label each rock for what it represents if you can. But yeah, go ahead, draw, color, label, and then we'll move on to our pebbles after that. Alright, so once you have filled with as many rocks as you can think of, we're going to move on to the pebbles. So pebbles are just a little bit smaller than rocks, so they are not quite as important in our life, but they still provide meaning. So these are things like friendships, things like your job, certain hobbies. They're things that you that are important to you, but things that you could live without. There are also things that tend to come and go, such as certain friendships in our lives. They're things that if they were to go, we would still be okay without, even though we wouldn't want to live without them. So think of stuff along those lines, and you can go ahead and fill in your jar with some pebbles, and we'll come back after that. Alright, so a lot of my pebbles, I can best describe them as luxuries that I have, that I'm very grateful to have, but I know that I could live without, and I may not always have. So that's kind of how I went about doing my pebbles. So now we are going to go about doing the sand. And you might notice that we can think of a lot more things to put for the sand. But we're doing it last for a reason, and I'll explain that to you guys afterwards. But basically, the sand is the filler things. It's the things that you do to pass time. It's the things that are not necessary, but are also luxuries. Things like social media, your material possessions, things that are just extra in your life that you have, okay? And they're things that you can want. There's nothing wrong with having these things, but they're things that aren't as important as the other things in your life, okay? So think about what fillers you have in your life, and you can go ahead and do smaller rocks to represent the sand. And we will come back once you've filled up the rest with your sand. Alright, so my sand was primarily filled with things that make my life easier. Things such as online shopping or Amazon Prime next day delivery, Netflix, YouTube, skip the dishes for food, any sort of social media site that makes you less likely to actually go out and have one-on-one conversation and contact with other people. So Facebook, Instagram, all these things that make your life easier, but are definitely not an essential part of it. So those are just some of the examples that I did. Again, yours could be completely different. It all depends on the person. So the reason why we went rocks, pebbles, sand is because if you were to fill your jar, which in this case is your life, if you were to fill your jar of life with all of the sand, so the non-essential things that make your life easy, if you were to fill your jar with those things first, you would find that you would run out of room for things that are more important, like your pebbles, and then the even more important things, which are your rocks. However, if you fill it with the rocks first, so the more important things, the essentials, and then you add in the pebbles, and then the sand, you actually have a lot more room and a lot more balance in your life, and you are putting priority for those things that are most important. So pay attention to your rocks, most importantly, what those are, and make sure that those are the priorities in your life. Make sure you're filling your jar with those first, because those are the things that you essentially can't live without. And yeah, just be aware of what are the sand things in your life, and is there too much sand? Do you need to fill it with more rocks, more pebbles? Kind of what is the balance going on in your life? And this is just kind of a way to visualize that. So I hope you guys like this prompt. I will see you guys again on Friday.